Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the September Planning Committee. Just to note, this meeting's been live streamed and recorded. Also, that as we have observers present, I'll introduce the top table. I'm Roy Allen, I'm chair of the committee. To my right is Natalie O.C. and Helena Stelliano, who are legal officers. Kate Goodall, who's the Democratic Services Officer. On my left is Mike Avery, who is the Director of Place, and Craig Miles, who is the Principal Planning Officer, and Claire Turton, who is a Planning Officer. I'd like to address tonight's speakers. When it comes to your turn to speak, I'll call you to the lectern, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. And I will stop you after 3 minutes if you're still speaking. And when you get to the lectern, just press the red button when you're ready to speak. Thank you. Okay, shall we move on to the agenda? Agenda item 1, do we have any apologies for absence?
Chair, Councillor Sam Smith will be here shortly.
Thank you.
Oh, and Councillor Martin Smith is substituting for Councillor Greensmith.
Thank you. Councillor Tosie Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Andrew Elwood. I'm Councillor Clive Towsey Hinton, attending in as his substitute. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any others?
Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Whiting.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to agenda item 2, which is the draft minutes of the last meeting. I'd like to propose them as a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Anyone like to speak on this item? Okay, nobody at all, thank you. Shall we move to the vote? So all those in favour of agreeing that these draft minutes are a true record of the previous meeting, please raise their hands. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's carried. Can I bring it to your attention the Planning Committee protocol? Please make sure you're familiar with it. I'll move on to agenda item 3. Are there any declarations of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? I can't see anybody, so we'll move on to agenda item 4, which is development at Ernahell Lodge Nursing Home. We have an objector who's speaking, that is Jamie Carruck. Could you please approach the lectern?
Start. Okay. Previous planning application submitted by the owner of the building was refused with specific detail given to the fact that the proposal was in contravention to paragraph 135 of the NPPF 2023. In the interest of the time, I'll assume the committee is well aware of what it contains, but the current proposal does little to address any of the issues raised in that. The proposed layout shows bare minimum of facilities within each flat. Usable outdoor space is also minimum. The design of the property is clearly based on maximising occupancy and commercial gain over providing a high standard of amenity for existing and future users, or promoting health and well-being. The space is clearly not inclusive, nor does it reflect the local area and its makeup. None of the flats would particularly lend themselves to being available for tenants with disabilities, nor are they suitable for people with young families, with a notable lack of 3-bedroom flats within the development. In the current application's design, a number of properties on James Street and Furlong Avenue are overlooked. Specific mention here should be given to the proposed third floor extension and dormer windows. Speaking personally, I would suffer from direct views into my garden, conservatory and living room if permitted, something I find wholly unacceptable, especially as the father of young children. The impact of this has clearly been overlooked by the applicant and his architect. And then parking and traffic are another significant issue. The submitted application states the following. Traffic, the proposals are for 19 number flats and allows for 13 number parking spaces in the existing car park area to the rear of the site. Technical note by Millwood Consulting Engineers is submitted for the application to explain the car parking ratio. The documentation I read from Millwood suggested the impact of the residential use would be less than that of the residential care home. In reality, this report houses a wealth of either false or manipulated information with regard to statistics and local information, and this proposal would bring significantly more traffic to the street. There are currently 58 number properties served by access from James Street. An additional number 19 dwellings would be an increase of 32.7% and would bring significant additional resident vehicles to an already busy street, exacerbating parking issues. Also, the increase in other vehicles such as Amazon, food deliveries, etc., will also increase the risk to the area's young children, making the roads significantly more hazardous. The average number of vehicles per dwelling in the East Midlands as of 2022 sat at 1.27. Based on this proposal, this would result in 24.13 additional vehicles for the dwelling, with only 13 parking spaces allowed. So, and in summary, whilst I think the residents of James and Furlong Street would like to see the care home repurposed for the good of the area, this needs to reflect the need for the local area, for families, and also respect the parking requirements that are needed for this street.
Thank you. I'd like to propose agenda item 4 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Oh, sorry, I've done this again. Let's move on to the introduction by Claire Turton. Thank you.
The application proposal is for the change of use of Ernhill Lodge from a nursing home to 19 dwellings with rear, side and roof extensions and alterations to external elevations. The site is located on Furlong Street at its junction with James Street within the urban area of Arnold. It is located within a residential area of primarily terraced housing fronting closely onto the public road. Arnold Local Centre lies to the rear of the site. These are some photographs of the site. If you can see on the top two photos, it's at the end of James Street. There is relevant planning history at the site. Planning permission was refused in February this year for a change of use of the property to a 29-bedroom house in multiple occupation, or an HMO. The reason for refusal was, and I quote, the intensification of the proposed use from a care home to an HMO to accommodate at least 29 people occupying a single building with shared bathroom and kitchen facilities, together with a limited amount of external amenity space, would unduly impact on the amenity of neighbouring occupiers within a densely populated area through noise and disturbance. This is the existing block plan, and the top left is the proposed. This current application differs from the previous refusal in that an HMO is no longer proposed, but 19 self-contained apartments. These are the existing floor plans of the nursing home, and these are the proposed floor plans. The apartments consist of 1 studio flat, 12 one-bedroom flats, and 6 two-bedroom flats. There will be 13 car parking spaces provided on site, along with cycle storage, bin storage, and landscaping. 4 of the units will have private gardens. The existing access is proposed to be utilised. These are the existing elevations and proposed. Various external alterations are also proposed, including a hip-to-gable roof extension to the front part of the building and the insertion of roof lights to create a second floor, extending the rear wing of the building, the erection of a dormer-style extension to the northern elevation of the rear wing to create a windowless corridor, new windows and boundary treatment, the removal of the canopy and blocking up of the building entrance on the front elevation, and the creation of a new building entrance on the southern side elevation facing the access. Turning now to the assessment of the application. The application site is located within the urban area of Arnold. As such, the principle of the proposed change of use to residential dwellings is acceptable through policy LPD 40, provided that it complies with certain criteria and other relevant planning policies. With regards to the design and appearance of the proposal, this is considered to be acceptable. The majority of the extension lies to the rear of the existing building and is not overly prominent within the street scene. Nonetheless, the proposed extensions are considered to be of an acceptable scale and their design is considered to be in keeping with the existing building. Plans have been submitted to show how the proposed extended building sits within the street scene, with the extended building to be no taller than its immediate neighbouring properties. The proposal is a high-density development at 158 units per hectare, but this is in accordance with LPD 33, which states that planning permission will not be granted for proposals for residential development of less than 30 dwellings per hectare, and also allows for higher densities where this does not harm local character. With regards to the internal layout of the units, policy ACS 8 requires that all new development should contain adequate internal living space. The Council's Environmental Health Officer has assessed the application on this basis and has raised no objection. The one-bedroom units are between 37 and 45.5 square metres in floor space, and the two-bedroom units are between 55.9 and 71.2 square metres, which is considered to be adequate internal space. All units are self-contained with their own facilities and primary rooms have natural light. Moving now to residential amenity, there have been a number of neighbouring objections and these are set out in section 4 of the committee report. With regards to issues of noise and disturbance, as mentioned previously, the planning history for this site is relevant. There has been a previous refusal for a change of use of the care home to a 29-bedroom HMO on these grounds. The Council's Environmental Health Officer objected to the previous planning application on the basis that there was a high propensity for antisocial behaviour to occur in an area with a population density as high as the previously proposed development. In addition to this, they had concerns regarding noise nuisance. This proposal differs from the previous refusal in that instead of being for a 29-bedroomed HMO, it is for 19 self-contained residential units. It is unclear as to the total number of residents that would be present in the building if planning permission were to be granted. For example, the one-bedroomed apartments may house a single person or a couple. It is possible that there may be more overall residents in the building if this current planning application were to be approved than the 29-bedroom HMO. However, the residents of 19 self-contained units would live differently to the residents of a 29-bedroom HMO. This is primarily because each unit would be entirely self-contained with no shared living facilities and as such significantly less interaction between residents. The Council's Environmental Health Officer was consulted on this current planning application and has raised no objections in terms of noise and disturbance from the number of units or occupiers proposed. If planning permission is approved, then conditions should be attached requiring a construction emissions management plan and controlling the hours of construction in order to control dust emissions and noise during the build. It is considered that the proposal will not cause unacceptable issues of overlooking. This is due to window location and separation distances between properties. With regards to issues of massing, overshadowing and overbearing, most of the building is existing with the main part of the proposed extension to the rear of the site away from neighbouring residential buildings. A number of neighbour concerns relate to crime and antisocial behaviour. Concerns mostly relate to the type of people that will occupy the units. However, there is no specific reason as to why this development for individual apartment would attract criminals. Like any place of residence, if crime does occur, then this is a matter for the police. The police have been consulted on the proposal and raised no objection. They have, however, made a number of suggestions as to how the proposal could add crime prevention and security measures, which the applicant has been made aware of, and this advice should be reiterated as an informative on the decision notice should planning permission be granted. There have been a number of neighbouring objections to the scheme on the grounds of parking and highway safety. At present, there are 8 car parking spaces serving the previous 21-bedroom care home. This scheme proposes to increase the car parking spaces to 13, as well as providing an area for secure cycle parking. Access to the parking area is to remain as existing. The Highway Authority has raised no objections to the access or car parking layout, subject to conditions regarding the car parking to be bound in a hard surface material and for the cycle storage to be available for use prior to the dwellings being brought into use. Parking space provision is a matter for the local planning authority to assess. There is currently high levels of on-street car parking in this residential area of Arnold. Many residential properties along James Street and Furlong Street are 19th century terrace properties, which are high density and have no on-site car parking. Due to its close proximity to Arnold Town Centre, neighbour objectors state that visitors to the town centre often park on these residential streets. Gedling Borough Council's parking provision SPD states that for 1 and 2 bedroomed apartments in an urban area, there is a requirement for 0.8 unallocated spaces per unit. The proposal is for 19 units, and therefore, according to the SPD, there should be a total of 16 car parking spaces provided. The current proposal is 3 car parking spaces below the figure in the council's SPD. There is no space remaining within the site to provide 3 additional car parking spaces. As such, the applicant was asked to consider reducing the number of residential units proposed to 16 units as, according to the SPD, the 13 car parking spaces proposed would be sufficient to provide for 16 residential units. The applicant considered this request but has not reduced the number of units proposed. The applicant has instead indicated that additional car parking is not required due to the site's highly sustainable location. On balance, it is considered that the proposal is acceptable with a shortfall of 3 car parking spaces. The site is located in a highly sustainable location in close proximity to the amenities and local transport of Arnold Town Centre. Residents could reside in this location without a private car. Furthermore, a secure bicycle storage area is also proposed to serve the development. This is supported by local planning policies. Paragraph 11.6.2 of the local plan states, and I quote, "The change of use of non-residential buildings to residential use can help to provide a range and variety of new homes. In recognition of its importance and so as to encourage this type of development, the Borough Council may allow lower parking standards in certain circumstances where it is considered appropriate. For example, near public transport corridors or near to shopping centres." And paragraph 4.12 of the Parking Standards SPD states, and I quote, "The expectation is that parking standards will be met. However, if the development is served by 1 or more regular public transport service, this may be a material consideration justifying a reduced parking provision, especially if a site is located within or close to a central area." With regards to planning obligations and viability, the NHS and Nottinghamshire County Council states that this development falls below their threshold for requesting financial contributions towards healthcare and education. The County Council are also not seeking contributions towards bus stop improvements or library stock. The Strategic Housing Team has commented that for a development of this size, 2 first homes and 2 affordable rent units are required. The applicant has submitted a viability assessment contesting that the scheme would not be viable if it included these affordable housing units. The Planning Department commissioned an independent viability advisor to assess the applicant's viability statement. The independent advisor does agree with the applicant that the figures demonstrate that the scheme is unable to provide any affordable housing or Section 106 payments, and that on this basis there is good justification on this scheme for removing the affordable housing contributions. The independent advisor has stated that this is not a marginal case, and as such a review or clawback provision is not considered necessary. For this reason, in this specific instance, affordable housing units are not required at this site as part of this planning application. To conclude, for the reasons stated above, it is considered that the proposed development is consistent with local and national planning policies, and as a result, the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Right, I would like to propose agenda item 4 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilkinson, thank you. Thank you. Does anybody want to speak? Okay. Just let me get your... Councillor Knight.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say that this was the home, when it was a home, that my mother spent her last days in. And to me, it has been very, very sad to see how it has deteriorated and now become derelict and a magnet for antisocial behaviour. To me, I think at one time there was a buzzing noise going on there that nobody ever seemed to be able to get to the bottom of. I'm glad to see it brought into use personally and improved. So I'm happy to accept this. I hear the reservations about the parking and cars. I have reason to travel along Furlong Avenue several times a week to visit family, so I'm aware of the problems in the area. But in a development like this, I would think it would be predominantly used by younger people who are actually less likely possibly to have a car. So on that basis, I'm for the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say I'm glad it's gone down from 29 to 19, but what worries me is the parking spaces, because quite frankly, I don't think it's enough. And if they have visitors, this is going to be absolutely horrendous for the people around there, the neighbours and everything, because if they've got visitors, it's going to be just terrible.
Thank you. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chair. Like previous speakers, I'm very pleased to see the much improved plan submitted. But I'm quite disappointed that the plan didn't include any affordable housing provision. I have a question I wasn't too clear of from the papers about door security. Has the recommendation was CCTV and door entry systems. Are these actually part of the conditions, or are they just a suggestion? Can they be enforced? Because it would seem to me to be a good idea to have these when, at the moment, with antisocial behaviour, I don't imagine that for a minute that the people who will inhabit them will necessarily be guilty of that. But in the past, it's attracted it, and it might take a little while for that attraction to die away. Thank you.
So we did consult the police on this application, who came back with no objections, but they did make a number of recommendations, quite a detailed recommendation sheet, but that it did include CCTV, sort of entry door systems. It was very detailed. So that has been passed on to the applicant, and the applicant has emailed back to confirm they are happy to incorporate that. We've only suggested it as an informative just because the police didn't object. It was more of an advice note. So for that reason, it has been suggested as an informative rather than a condition.
Thank you. Catherine Pope.
Thank you, Chair. I too think it's a much better proposal than we had previously, and I agree that it's in a place where we do want to encourage people to be living. It's much better to be developing these sites than sites that are out on our green spaces where we've got that option. However, my concern around the parking and the affordable housing is that we keep repeatedly having people come to us and say the site isn't viable unless we allow this, and surely accumulatively we're now missing, we're increasing the problem of lack of parking every time one of these goes through, and also we're missing opportunities to provide affordable housing to some of our residents. So I appreciate if you've commissioned an independent review of that, then that's something that reluctantly I probably have to accept. But I think perhaps we need to look at where are we going to fill these gaps.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. This site has been empty for some time now, so I think we should welcome the fact that we have a proposal in front of us to develop it. The previous application was clearly completely unsuitable, and I was very glad that it was turned down. This is much better, and overall I welcome it. You won't be surprised to hear I am once again disappointed to see a developer finding a way to opt out of their obligations. Often it's under Section 106, but in this case it's affordable housing, and that is a disappointment, as others have said. I have some concerns about the parking, but Highways have not expressed any concerns about it. So, on that basis, it'd be very difficult for us to reject it on highway matters. I'm very familiar with the local transport links in the area, and I do accept they are very good, and I hope that many of the residents will be taking advantage of those. So overall, on balance, I am minded to support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you, Chair. I won't go over what colleagues have already mentioned about affordable housing. My main concern is the parking. And I know everybody said it's great to have this site redeveloped, which of course it is, but we shouldn't accept a site being redeveloped without recourse to the rules. And the rules are, in this case, that with 19 dwellings, there should be 0.8 parking spaces per dwelling. That equates to 16 spaces, as the officer has already said, and we only have 13. I know, obviously, we'll try and mitigate that by saying it's near the shops and it's on a bush route, etc., etc. But just a quick calculation, if you have one person for every bedroom, then in theory there could be 25 people with cars. I don't accept that you can say, oh, but it's maybe going to be occupied by people who won't have a car. They may well have a car, and there could be 25 cars trying to get into 13 spaces. So what's going to happen to them? They're going to park on James's Street or Furlong Avenue. Already, as we've already said, this is a residential area with terraced houses. So it's already oversubscribed for parking. And what we'll be doing is we'll be adding to that problem in an effort to try and squeeze through a development that doesn't adhere to the rules. So what is the point in having the rules if we're not going to adhere to them?
Okay, can we have silence, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So in my view, because of that reason, I think I have to find that it's the same, should be refused on the same basis as the previous planning permission, which it will have an undue impact on the amenity of the area. And so in my view, that is why I won't be able to support this particular application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers on this item? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Fully support everything my colleague, Councillor Bestwick, has just said. If this application were, however, to be passed, I'd just like to go back to the comments made by Councillor Strong, where she talked about, and I think the officer mentioned, about conditions being advisory. If this application were to be passed, I'd like those conditions to do with keyless entry, etc., to be an enforceable condition, please.
Are you proposing that as an amendment?
Yes.
Is there a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you.
Yeah, just in terms of planning legislation and guidance, to require some specific measures around locks on doors, for example, CCTV to be controlled by way of a planning condition, that would be very difficult for the local authority to enforce. Possibly could be contrary to the SIL regulations as well, that there's no reason for that. The police haven't objected to the application, and what they've suggested is that there should be a note to applicants. So I think this will be very difficult for the council to enforce.
Do you want to withdraw the proposed amendment after that?
No, I'd just like to make one comment. Whilst it may not be enforceable by Gedling Borough Council, would still like it to be put into place. Whether we can enforce it or not, the conditions would insist that these measures are there. I'd like to put it to vote, please.
Okay, there's an amendment, and I think we're all aware of the amendment, which is to have a condition for locks and other items, as discussed earlier. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. All those against? And any abstentions? So that's carried. So the recommendation is amended. Okay, so anybody else want to speak on this item? Councillor Tosie Hilton.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, on the ward where I live, a planning application was put in for apartments, and the parking spaces allocated to the ratio of apartments was considerably less. As a result, the planning permission was granted, but as a result, we now have several cars parking in a dangerous position on a junction which is used by 2 bus routes. And I don't feel I could support this application based on the parking facilities being offered. It falls well short of what we are obliging them to provide. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this item? Okay, we'll move to the vote. The recommendation is to grant as we've amended. So all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. So the recommendation was defeated, so we're going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. Thank you. All those in favour of the adjournment? Okay, we're now going to reconvene the meeting. Thank you. So we're now still dealing with agenda item 4. The original recommendation was defeated. Mr Avery has a new recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. So the motion to grant planning permission has been defeated as outlined by the Chairman. I've listened to the debate. Some members have got significant concerns around car parking and highway safety. So the officer position is detailed in the report that the level of car parking, given the proximity to the town, to Arnold Town Centre, is compliant with our policies. But as I say, I have listened to the debate, and members may wish to propose a reason for refusal as follows. There are currently high levels of on-street car parking close to the application site, and the proposal does not provide adequate off-street car parking to serve the development. As such, it is considered that the development will cause unacceptable issues of on-street car parking in the surrounding area to the detriment of highway safety. As such, the proposal is contrary to policies 57 and 61 of the adopted local planning document 2018.
Thank you. I will propose the reason for refusal for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Pope. Does anybody want to speak? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Fully agree with the new motion in front of us. Can I just clarify what Mr Avery's just said? You said in your introduction before reading the new motion out that it complied with our policies, but paragraph 11.6 says it's 3 short of our SPD, so how can it comply? I just want that clarification, please.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So I draw your attention to paragraph 4.12 of the Parking Standards Supplementary Planning Document. That states the expectation is that parking standards will be met. However, if the development is served by one or more regular public transport service, this may be a material consideration to justify a reduced parking provision requirement, especially if a site is located within or close to a central area. So this site is located, I would suggest, less than a minute's walk away from High Street and Front Street in Arnold Town Centre. So that's why my advice is that there is compliance with the LPD.
Thank you. Any other councillors want to speak? Councillor Catherine Pope.
I just wondered if there were alternative options we could offer. So do we not have council car parks in the area that some use could be made of to help with the 3 additional spaces? I'm aware that we will, if it's appealed, we're not in a good position with it because of what you've just read out.
There are council car parks in the area. There's free car parking in the evening, and there could potentially be a possibility to issue permits. That's not something that's been explored as part of these proposals.
Thank you. Any other councillors want to speak on this new recommendation? Okay, let's move to the vote. So all those in favour of the new recommendation? Thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. That was carried. For those visitors, if you want to leave now, or you can carry on to listen to the rest of the planning committee, you're welcome to do so. Carried. The new recommendation was carried. The original recommendation was refused. Thank you. We'll just give the visitors a moment to leave the room. Could you not speak till you've left the chamber? Thank you. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 5, which is the development at Coppice Farmhouse. I now remember that Claire is going to speak on this item, introduce this item.
Yeah, there are 2 updates on this application. Firstly, members will note that condition 9 on page 109 of the Planning Committee agenda recommends that if planning permission is granted for this development, then this should be subject to a condition requiring the applicant to agree a construction method statement. As part of this construction method statement, an alternative temporary road for construction traffic to access the site directly from the B684 Mapley Plains could be explored. Whilst no precise details have yet been agreed, the Highway Authority has been consulted on this and has raised no objection to the principle of a temporary access road in this location during the construction of the site. The applicant has also confirmed that they are agreeable in principle to the suggested temporary access road. Secondly, there has been one further neighbour objection to the proposal received after the committee report was published. This letter states that dog walkers from the new Davidson Homes estate are increasingly allowing their dogs to foul on her garden, and that if planning permission is granted for this new development, then this situation may worsen. This site comprises a parcel of land located on the western side of Mapley Plains, or the B684, within the built-up area. The site forms part of the residential allocation H7 within the Gedling local plan. The site is bound along its northern and western boundaries by the remainder of allocation H7, which is now under development by Davidson Homes for a residential scheme comprising of 164 dwellings. Along its southern boundary, the site adjoins Brookfields Garden Centre, which is also allocated for residential development. To the east, the site fronts onto Mapley Plains, whilst within its south-eastern corner, the site abuts the rear yard belonging to Coppice Farmhouse, where planning permission has previously been approved for a residential development of 3 dwellings. Arnold Public Footpath 3 runs across the site. And these are some photos of the site. Full planning permission is sought for residential development of 54 dwellings, comprising 38 open market dwellings and 16 affordable dwellings, along with the provision of private gardens, public open space, sustainable drainage, roads, car parking and landscaping. The scheme proposes a mix of house types and sizes, including 2 and 2.5 storey properties, and offering a range of terraced, semi-detached and detached properties ranging from 2 to 5 bedrooms. And this is just an example of some of the properties being proposed. Located centrally within the application site, it is proposed to include an area of public open space with a further smaller area of public open space within the south-western corner. Around the perimeter of the application site, existing hedgerow and trees will be retained and protected, with additional planting also proposed. The current application site will be accessed via the approved Davidson home development immediately to the north, with Shipley Close entering the site on its northern boundary. And the photo in the middle there shows Shipley Close with the site in the background. Within the application site, this road will be constructed to an adoptable standard and will link to the main street, which runs along an east-west access through the proposed development. A further adoptable spur will be provided to the north of this main street, whilst to the south, properties will be served by a series of private drives. The existing public footpath, which bisects the site, is proposed to be diverted through the development. This is shown on the submitted plans but would need to form part of a formal footpath diversion order application should planning permission for this current residential planning application be approved. The footpath is proposed to continue to enter the site at its northeastern corner from Mapley Plains before following dedicated footways through the development. The public footpath will then exit the site at its southeast corner through the smaller area of public open space before linking through to Crawford Rise to the west. Turning now to the assessment of the application, the principle of residential development on this site is already established as the site is allocated for residential development as part of housing allocation H7 in the Gedling local plan. The design of the proposal is considered to be acceptable and not have an unacceptable impact on the character or visual amenity of the area. 54 dwellings are proposed across the site, which results in a density of 25 dwellings per hectare. This is slightly lower than the 30 dwelling per hectare threshold identified in policy LPD 33. However, the design and layout is considered to respect the character of the area, and the site also incorporates 2 areas of public open space. Double-fronted properties are proposed on key corner plots, and materials would be a mixture of red brick under red and grey tiled roofs with a smaller number of plots, including white render, to add interest and assist in legibility. Around the perimeter of the site, existing hedgerow and tree planting will be retained and protected. Additional planting is proposed around the outer boundary of the site and within the body of the site. Turning now to the impact of the proposal on the residential amenity of occupiers on neighbouring properties. A number of neighbouring objections have been received regarding the impact on the occupiers of properties on Shipley Close. This is where the access road to the site is proposed. In particular, this is through noise from traffic accessing the site through the construction phase and once the development is occupied. Should planning permission be granted, concerns have also been raised regarding loss of privacy during the construction phase from drivers of construction vehicles using Shipley Close. As mentioned previously, by way of a verbal update at the start of this committee presentation, a temporary access road for construction traffic direct from the B684 has been agreed in principle. This is subject to securing final details through a construction method statement as suggested in Condition 9 of the committee report. In any case, house building sites are not uncommon next to existing residential areas, and noise from construction traffic in general is only temporary in nature. If noise levels do become a noise nuisance, then the Council's environmental health team would be able to investigate this. With regards to noise once the development is built out, should planning permission be granted, it is not considered that an access road serving an additional 54 dwellings would create a sufficient level of noise to be classed as a noise nuisance, as a road serving this number of dwellings is not uncommon for a residential area. With regards to dust and dirt during the construction phase, the Council's scientific officer has raised no objections to the proposal, subject to a number of conditions, including the submission of a construction's emission management plan. The proposal is not considered to cause unacceptable issues of massing overshadowing, overbearing or overlooking onto neighbouring properties. This is primarily due to layout and separation distances between properties, as well as the presence of existing hedgerows which are proposed to remain. The properties with the shortest separation distance are Plot 1 and 17 Shipley Close, which are 8 metres apart. However, these are two side elevations. And with regards to separation distances between adjacent windows, the closest separation distances are within the site itself between plots 41 and 49, and this is 21 metres. Turning now to highway safety, one of the most frequent neighbour objections to this proposal is the access road through the existing Davidson Homes development, with a number of neighbours stating that direct access to the site should be from the B684 Mapley Plains. However, paragraph 5.22 of the Council's development brief for the site provides the following statement regarding access to the wider allocated H7, and I quote, "All sites will be served with a primary access road. Access to site H7 will be provided via a new roundabout interchange with Mapley Plains and Catfoot Lane." As such, the clear intention at the site allocation stage was for a single primary access road from the new roundabout to serve the whole H7 site. Furthermore, the Highway Authority has assessed the planning application and has raised no objection to the proposed access arrangements, stating that, and I quote, "Junction capacity assessment has been undertaken at the B684 Catfoot Lane roundabout. Table 6 of the transport assessment shows it will still operate within its theoretical maximum in the 2028 future year assessment scenario, which is acceptable." Following amendments, the Highway Authority now raised no objection to the proposed roads within the application site itself. Following a request from the Highway Authority, the applicant has submitted tracking details to show that it is possible for a dust cart and a car to pass one another on all parts of the proposed adopted highway, specifically on the bends. This proposal does exceed the parking requirements contained within the Council's parking provision SPD, as explained in paragraphs 10.8 to 10.9 of the committee report. Arnold Public Footpath number 3 traverses the site. The submitted plans show that this footpath will remain but will be rerouted through the site to enable the housing development. Nottinghamshire County Council's Rights of Way officer has raised no objection to this proposal subject to conditions, and the diversion of the footpath will require approval through a separate footpath diversion order application. With regards to ecology, an ecology survey was submitted in support of the planning application. This survey concludes that the proposal will not impact on ecology at the site or in the wider area, subject to a number of conditions. These include tree and hedgerow protection during construction and a low-impact lighting strategy. The survey recommends a precautionary approach during construction works. Ecology enhancements are also recommended, such as the installation of bat and bird boxes. With regards to flood risk and drainage, the site is located within flood zone 1 and therefore at a low risk of flooding. Nonetheless, due to the size of the proposal, a full flood risk assessment was submitted with the application. The Environment Agency has been consulted on the application and has raised no objections. Surface water drainage information has also been submitted in support of the application. The lead local flood risk authority has assessed this information and found it to be acceptable. This is subject to a condition requiring precise details of surface water drainage being approved prior to the commencement of development. Turning now to developer contributions, the application meets the trigger for a number of contributions to make the development acceptable in planning terms, and the applicant has agreed to make all of the requested contributions. These will be secured through a Section 106 legal agreement should planning permission be granted. Full details of these contributions are set out in paragraph 14.3 of the committee report, but to summarise include contributions towards education, libraries, primary health care, as well as the provision of on-site affordable housing and public open space, as well as monitoring fees and a local labour agreement. To conclude, this application is fully policy compliant, and as a result, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the signing of a Section 106 legal agreement securing the required developer contributions.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to propose agenda item 5 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Thank you. Okay, so do I have any speakers on this item? Councillor Graham Pope.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Overall, I welcome this application for this piece of land to be developed further, particularly the contribution to affordable housing. I do have some concerns about the claims made within the application about access to public transport. Earlier this year, public transport was rerouted in this area, and I believe the nearest bus stop is now approximately a mile away from Beedham Way. So this may have been written before that happened, but I can't see the claim that public transport is easily accessible, carrying much water, and therefore giving free bus passes to residents really won't be much use. The other thing, and I suppose it's really a question, the application that will be forthcoming around the rerouting of the footpath, I wonder what will be put in place to allow those folk who currently use that footpath to be able to walk across to Crawford Rise or from Crawford Rise up onto Plains Road. I'm aware that some of the residents of Patchett Close had complained some time ago about folk in effect pushing through the hedge and breaking the hedge down between Armadale Close and Patchett Close, and I believe Davidson's remedied that by putting some fence up, but I can see that happening again if some remedial footpath isn't put in place. Thank you.
So it's quite faint on the plan. Let's see if I can get my pointer to work. So there is a dotted line which shows the proposed footpath route. So it will still enter the site here, which is as it existing, and then it goes in front of the area of open space and then through this open space, and it is proposed to exit. So the entrance and exit points will be the same. It will just sort of go around the open space and across the roads. So that is all subject to a formal footpath diversion order, but that is what's shown on the plans at the moment.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. My question is about what will happen whilst the building works will be taking place, because there are users of that footpath. It's not a great footpath because it just runs across a field. But there are users, and I'm mindful that the behaviours that were seen previously will just become accentuated because folk will try and push their way through or find an alternative route and create problems for some of the residents, particularly around Patchett Close and Hallford Avenue.
So the rights of way officer has commented on the application, and there are a number of informatives that she has suggested, and one of them is to not obstruct the public footpath during construction, unless of course they've agreed it or they're notified of it and agreed all in writing beforehand. So that there are a number of informatives in the application pack regarding that.
Thank you. I have some speakers, which will be Councillor Strong, followed by Wilkinson, followed by Beswick, followed by Sam Smith, Sorry? Thank you. Followed by Councillor Wheeler. So it's Councillor Strong next.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo Councillor Pope's concerns about public transport provision in this area. There's only one service anyway, and the stops are quite a long way from this development now. I'm also very pleased to hear, I didn't hear it properly, but I'm quite pleased to hear that a temporary construction entrance will be constructed, for want of a better word, which will be much to the relief of the residents of Shipley Close. I would be very pleased indeed if that could be made permanent, but I understand from the original plan about the H7 site that it was not included. I don't think the people who bought houses in Shipley Close, I don't think their solicitors looked at that. However, I'm very pleased about the construction entrance and hope that the similar consideration will be given, as Councillor Pope says, to the footpath users. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by congratulating the officers for keeping the hedgerow in this development? I think it's very welcome, and I hope it's something that we can do in future developments, especially if the green belt is start to be built on, which we're led to believe could be a possibility in the near future. I just have one question, really, and I suspect I know the answer. I'm just a little bit concerned for the residents to the north, particularly of the development, as to how long the building phase will last. It's going to be, I know there's provision in for helping with noise and lorries and all that sort of thing, but if you live there, I think it's going to be very disruptive to your life while the building phase goes on. Is there anything we can do to specify a building period from start date to finish? I think I know the answer because Mr. Avery is shaking his head. Because I've asked him before.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
obviously once permission's granted, they've got 3 years to start the development, but unfortunately there's no time frame for that to end. So once it's started, it is extant, and there isn't a time frame for that to complete.
Thank you. I knew the answer, but I'm going to keep asking it because I might start a trend. You never know. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sam Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to talk about paragraph 11, if I may, and I won't surprise people that is drainage and flooding. The existing site to the right of, or where that roundabout is, has caused runoff on Hamilton Close, and I've flagged that with planning officers previously when residents have contacted me about that. I appreciate paragraphs 11 to 11.5 state that it's in a low flood risk zone, but we know in reality the causes that people are living through from the development next to it. So I do question that. 11.2 says there'll be a condition on the submission of a drainage detail. My question is, will there be anything in that we can enforce if runoff does sadly happen onto Halbeck Road and the houses around there as a cause of this development, which is already happening on Hamilton Close, caused by the development that already exists? Will there be anything in there specifically that we can enforce to stop that?
Yeah, so the condition proposed, we believe, is fully enforceable. Yeah, and that's for surface drainage, both during construction and if planning permission is granted once the development's built out. But yes, we do believe it to be fully enforceable.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Yeah, I walk that area very regularly, across those fields, and I used to walk the fields where Davison Homes is now. I just want to echo what Councillor Smith said around the flooding, because in the past I've actually had to deliver sandbags to Hamilton Close in that area that have been affected by the development from Davison. Also, in terms of a temporary access road, can we guarantee that that will be just temporary? Because I remember Davison Homes putting an access road in illegally when they shouldn't have done it. I had to go up and visit the residents in the area and put a stop to that quite quickly. I'm very pleased, generally speaking, around how the development will go in terms of protection of hedgerows, trees, etc. And I'm very pleased with the requirements around the ecological diversity, protecting the ecological diversity. I'm also pleased that there's going to be some mitigations around putting some back boxes up and things like that. So by and large, I think the development looks quite sustainable. But I do have, like Councillor Smith said, concerns around flooding, particularly further down, because obviously it's at height. And I know for a fact that whilst Davison Homes was being constructed, we had a lot of problems with clay, mud, and water surface runoff down below. The other concern I do have, again, which was raised by Councillor Pope and Councillor Strong, was around the public transport access. The bus is quite a long way away, you know, and it's quite a walk. So I'd like to see some work done around making sure that there is adequate public transport. And I'd like to ensure, or like to see that the footpath, the public footpath around there, because in places it's very narrow, it is adequately made sufficient for people to access, you know, that road more generally speaking around that area. I have in the past raised concerns about speeding traffic on the top there. I did, because at the moment the speed limit there is 40 miles an hour. I'd like to see that reduced to 30 in and around that development area, because I do have concerns moving forward, particularly with, obviously, you've got Catford Lane, you've got the cemetery, etc. There's a lot of developments in that area, so I do have concerns around speeding traffic as well. But by and large, looking at it, it does look like a relatively sustainable development. Thank you.
So the proposed temporary construction access road, it would be that. It would be temporary just while the development's taking place for the construction traffic, and that would be fully enforceable.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions, and I'm sure Mike will be able to answer them. Was there any at any point any consideration to trying to find another access rather than just the one, another road to access the development? I do realise that the island was a major infrastructure project and it was there for that reason. And I'm just concerned, and again, I don't know whether you know, whether all the new residents who are already in that estate did know that that is going to be the route in and out for an awful lot more houses to come. Just a query.
Yeah, thank you for your question. It's certainly a requirement of the development plan, and that's detailed in the report. In terms of what information was provided to the occupant, to the purchasers of those properties at the Davidson site, we don't have that information. But the feedback that we've had from the Highways Authority is they will be opposed to a secondary access to this housing allocation. So, as I said earlier, in the development plan, it was clearly set out that there will be a single point of access to the housing allocation. So, I think a secondary permanent access would be there will be some significant highway safety concerns with that. That's why it's not proposed.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers? No. So we're going to move to the vote. The recommendation is to grant permission as stated in paragraph 17 on page 107 in the agenda. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. So we move now to item 6. This is a reserve matter application relating to the development at Top Wickhay Farm. We have one speaker. Speaker is Olivia Hewitt, who is the planning manager for Vistry Partnership, the applicant. Please start when ready.
Good evening, members and chair. Vistry are a leading house builder providing high-quality communities for all across the country. We've worked tirelessly with your officers throughout the course of this application to ensure the scheme creates just this. The scheme before you tonight provides a range of homes including one-bedroom apartment and maisonette right through to spacious 5-bedroom family homes. We discussed and agreed the affordable housing mix with your housing team so that it reflects the needs of the area, which include wheelchair bungalows and large family homes, which the borough requires most. The open space has been designed alongside the parks team, taking on board comments such as increased POS parking and a higher variety of play equipment. In terms of drainage, we follow the principles set out at outline. By developing the existing site, we are going to provide a betterment in terms of surface water drainage, as our proposals will capture this, store and manage the flows through our proposed scheme through associated drainage ponds and ditches. Alongside working with officers prior to the submission of these proposals, we met with local residents at a public consultation event. We discussed the scheme in detail and took on board comments such as making changes in terms of plot types and positionings next to adjacent residents. We've also continued these discussions with residents during the reserve matters process via email. As well as this, we also set to provide an on-site construction training academy, which will train various trades to young people and people looking to change their career within the local area. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you echo the recommendation of your officers to move to approve this application.
Thank you. Craig Miles will introduce the item.
Thank you, Chair. Good to be back. There's quite a lot to get through this evening. I'll try to keep it as short as possible if I can. Just one committee update, Chair. Active Travel England have responded since the committee report was published to say that they still object to applications for the reasons outlined in the report. So the application site needs little introduction. It's been part of our development plan since 2014. It was allocated in the Line Core strategy, and there's been ongoing discussions about how it should be developed since then. So land itself is allocated for 1,000 houses in total. Commercial use is a local centre, primary school and open space. By way of background, members may recall considering the outline application that established the principle of development back in March 2021. The outline consent gave permission in principle for 805 homes land for employment uses, a local centre, primary school, and open space, and was subject to Section 106 agreement. As part of that permission, an illustrative master plan was approved, and also a parameter plan was provided, and that's been approved subsequently. Now, these documents are quite important because they set out a framework of how the site should be developed, not only in terms of location, you see the different colours on the map, but in terms of how high buildings should be, and a broad indication of the road network. Now, in the meantime, you might see in a picture there, the County Council have progressed their part of the site. I think they own the entirety of the site pretty much. And there's a new county building on the west part of the site, and that was dealt with via county matter some time ago. And that's just about complete in terms of the external appearance of the building. So our job today is to assess the Reserved Matters application, and we're assessing it against the provisions of the original development plan, but also what was approved at outline stage. Now, just to go back to the illustrative master plan, you'll note the areas of open space, employment land, a broad primary route through the site, etc. And that small column down the side, and I don't expect you to manage to read that. And also the parameter plan in terms of heights and amounts in various areas. So just move on to the proposed use and amount. Now, these different colours tie up with the proposed illustrative master plan. So it pretty much aligns with what was set out in that outline application. And that is the site layout plan there. I'll just take you through it. Now, one important point, you should note that the land for the primary school, local centre and commercial areas are not included in this application, and a further reserved matters application will be required for those, so the development's excluding those areas. In terms of amount, 763 dwellings and apartments are proposed, and anticipated the other shortfall out of the, I think it's 803, would be accommodated in the local centre at a future date. There would be 95 affordable rented homes and 40 shared ownership forms, and that would be spread throughout the development. Now, as discussed previously, the layout broadly mirrors the master plan that was approved at outline stage, and also the parameter plan. In terms of access, there's a primary route right through the site. I don't know if I've got another plan that's better than that. No. Yeah, I'll go to the access plan, sorry. Hopefully. There we go. This is a footpath and cycle route. I'll come on to it in a bit more detail, but it shows a clear route through the site. So the site's accessed on that south-east corner. And there's a loop road that continues right round past, see if it works this time. Whoops, what have I done? There we go. Past the centre, the County Council building, and it comes out that roundabout on Ainsley Road. So there'd also be different character areas. So, put that on the plan somewhere. There's not many plans, isn't there? Hold on. There we go. We've got these character areas, so different neighbourhoods as part of the wider development. We're dealing with a large quantum of development. So the northern character area comprises of the smaller units and has a consistent architectural style, which is quite modern, characterised by brick details around windows and door openings. Now, the central character area is located alongside the local centre, or what would be the local centre. That's that grey area in the middle where the primary school would be also. Now, that also has a higher density to reflect its location in the heart of the development. These buildings are predominantly 3 stories tall and feature a consistent approach to stone facades on the ground floor and render on the first floor. And I've got some CGI images, just give you an indication of what it would look like. The eastern character area serves a tradition transition between the denser centre and the surrounding countryside. Let's go back to landscape area and that. So that eastern block there is sort of browny, pinky coloured on the eastern part of the site. And there'll be larger houses creating a lower density towards the edge of the site. And there'll be prominent frontages in this area that would incorporate a combination of stone facades and red pantile roofs, along with stone detailing, ensuring that development respects the prominent materials found in nearby Limby parish and maintains a sort of semi-rural character. Then the last one in the south, southern character area, features larger house types and lower densities. Stone detail and stone facades on key frontages would help to integrate development into the surrounding context. There's that many house types. I couldn't fit them all on, but I'll give you some selection of what it might look like. This is a CGI of looking to the site for that Ainsley Road to the west. And there's another one looking from Linby across the site. On key plots such as cornered plots or those facing green corridors, typically identified by a combination of render and chimneys, there's an existing ditch, you could see here, just on the right-hand side, that leads towards the heart of the village, is overlooked by proposed dwellings. There'll be new planting and white state railings along the ditch, which is similar to the character of Main Street in Limby. I'll just move on to the consultation responses. Surprisingly, there'd only been 2 public comments in relation to the proposed development. Neighbours were consulted twice. Site notices and press notices were also published. In terms of consultee responses from statutory consultees, there's no objections from the Highway Authority, Environment Agency, Local Lead Flood Authority, Environmental Health, Strategic Housing, Parks and Street Care. The 3 consultees that do object are Active Travel, and I'll expand on that a little bit later, but they're in essence objecting that alterations are required to the development to meet national and local standards to provide a choice for people to walk, wheel or cycle through the development. And Sport England object on a lack of changing room facilities, which I'll come on to in a minute. The Parish Council, I should say, also object on the basis that it would be a piecemeal development, so small proportions in turn and not a wider master plan. I have to say I disagree with that. They also object in terms of drainage and design. And also object, strangely, that would be an unsustainable location. Title to their comments, of course. In terms of design, our assessment is that layout accords with the indicative master plan, parameter plan that was approved as part of the outline application. There are a variety of house types and sizes, and the design would respect the character and appearance of the wider area, and the density would also be appropriate, effectively fit as many houses as they could do, whilst providing open space, etc. on the site. In terms of open space, there's quite a lot to talk about. We've got an open space plan, so that's the access plan I'll come back to. So the main area of open space would be this northern section. I'll try and get my clicker to work. Oops. It's this one here, isn't it? So this is the main area of open space. There'll be 2 other smaller areas, leaps are called. One down here, one here and one over here. Now, the main area of open space has been a bit of controversy around it, and you may recall a couple of months ago the Council considered a change to the Section 106 agreement that accompanied the original outline application. And in essence, that was to change the sport pitches. We've got a plan here, yeah. Change the pitches from 11-a-side to 9-a-side, especially because there's not enough room for a 11-side pitch. By the time you took all the markers and the space around it. And that was subsequently approved at committee. Following consultation with Sport England, they object because they say, well, we need changing rooms for these 9-a-side pitches. It was never specified in the outline application that a changing room was required, hence we've not got one. But what we have done, we have future-proofed the site, and we've moved things around so that, clicker's not working, here we go. So this area here, there is space at a future date that this could be provided. And also, we've provided car parking for the football pitches here. Now, it's quite involved, the area of open space. There's quite a lot to it. We've got a multi-use games area, which is just to the right there. We've got the 2 playing pitches, skate park, and we've got table tennis. We've got the sort of play area to the south. As I say, the car parking, and it's future-proofed for changing rooms at a later date. Now, our Parks and Street Care team have initially advised that they wanted a larger multi-games use area to be provided, but it seems accepted that it would be alongside the skate park, and when combined would actually exceed the requirement for open space. The following revisions to layout include, as I mentioned, cycle stands, seating, soft landscaping, and they do not object to the proposals. I'll just move on and touch on the safeguarding area for the trams. Sorry, there is a lot to get through. If we could find a plan. There we go. So in the outline application, there was a safeguarded area required for potential link-up with the tram network. And that area has been safeguarded as part of this reserved matters application. Although the width of it's changed very slightly, I think it would. We're down to 12 metres in this location only, and I think it was initially 14 metres from memory, right through. I think one question that had come up is there car parking for it. There's potential car parking for it in the local centre, or perhaps out with the site. But at the present, the development would go right up to the boundary of it. Here we go. So we'll be leading around this location at a future date. We've consulted NET. They do not object because the area has been safeguarded, and it'd be a decision on a later date whether it'd actually be hooked up or not. Right, just roads and parking. Touch on that slightly. So access was approved at outline stage in terms of where it's been accessed from, and I've outlined it be from Topwig Hill Road and Ainsley Road by a signalised junction. The layout provides a clear hierarchy of streets. So you've got the primary route running through the site. A little pointer to it somewhere, there it is. So you've got this primary route running through the centre of the site, and we've got these secondary roads that feed into the primary road. So this is an approach that's been thought through with the Highway Authority and the Council and applicant over the last 10 years or so. I should say it works quite well because it then feeds into different neighbourhoods or character areas, as they're called. So in terms of parking, the development actually complies with the Council's own SPD, and there'll be a chance for questions once I eventually get round to finishing this presentation. There'd be sufficient space for car parking for each dwelling, and there'd be visitor spaces.
Sorry, Craig. I think Councillor Pope.
It's only to ask if you could try and speak into the microphone, because when you turn away, we can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. I've actually just noticed the microphone was turned down very slightly, so I'll get that up to full speed here for you. Where was I? So the council complies with own SPD on car parking standards. Each dwelling would have its own car parking space, and there'd be sufficient visitor spaces. Now, in terms of cycle routes, etc., Active Travel's actually objected to the proposals, as I mentioned earlier. And I'll just provide you the footpath plan and the cycle plan. I'm really a bit dumbfounded as to what else we can provide. The blue areas, you'll note, are footpaths that can be cycled onto. We've got a key area here down the centre of the site. It's actually partly a nature reserve, local wildlife site, I should say. That's very well linked, provides link right through the middle of the site. All the open space areas are connected to other parts of the site. And I'll just refer you to 7. So the basis of active travel's objection is that it doesn't provide a choice for people to walk, wheel or cycle. Personally, I fundamentally disagree with that assessment. The applicant has tried to address their concerns. They're unable to amend the geometry of the junctions, but they're pretty much fixed in illustrative master plan. But they have amended it to adopt traffic calming measures whereby there would be raised tables along the Spine Road and Secondary Street where geometry does allow for it. Also, all junctions and a cycleway would be included, and there's also a cycleway along the primary routes of the development. So whilst we've got an objection, we fundamentally don't agree with it, and it doesn't change their overall recommendation. I'll just speak a little bit about drainage. We've only got another 2 topics to go after this, and we're open for discussion. So in drainage, we've got a sustainable drainage scheme that's been highlighted on the outline application. So you've got a decent plan for you. The applicant's accompanied by a site-wide drainage strategy which echoes the outline application, whereby there would be above-ground water storage areas dotted around. There'd be 3 of them dotted around the development, which would have restricted outfall rates as well. The ultimate outfall for the water would be an existing water course which leads in an easterly direction just to the south of the proposed local centre, and it exits the easternmost part of the site. Now, the lead local flood authority has been consulted and they have no objections to the proposal. However, it should be noted that an outline permission also considered flood risk and drainage as part of the determination of that application, and its requirement of the outline consent that no phase shall commence until drainage plans of the disposal of foul and surface water drainage have been submitted to and approved by the local planning authority. On this basis, it's considered that there's a low risk of flooding as a result of the development, and it accords with our drainage strategy and incorporates SUDs and ensures that the site and adjacent land will not be at risk of flooding. Touch on heritage next. Now, the site is about 400 metres from the corner of Lynn Conservation Area. We've had some comments to indicate it may affect the setting of the conservation area. I happen to disagree with that. Between the site and the conservation area, we've got a railway line. And we've got 2 embankments along that railway line, and we've also got a distance of over 400 metres. So any potential harms considered to be negligible. Well, lastly, you might be pleased to hear that we're on to landscape. Now, landscape was a reserved matter to be considered at this stage. And we've an illustrative landscaping plan submitted, and I'll just take you through that. 7.41. Now, it details that areas of open space would be appropriately landscaped with native species. The primary roads would be tree-lined, and there would be separate strategy for each character area. Existing green infrastructure is, where possible, retained and complemented by additional landscape weaving through the residential plots. It should also be noted the structural planting is proposed around the play space and central multi-use games area. The overall landscape and green infrastructure strategy is based on features of the local landscape character, including planting belts and hedgerows. The landscaping scheme, as proposed, is not too much different to what was submitted at outline stage, but there is a requirement on condition 23 of the outline permission that requires all species in particular locations to be provided before development commences, and an arboricultural assessment also But to be frank, there's not many trees on the site because it's been used for agriculture for so long. But there is a condition requiring any trees that die within a 5-year period to be replaced. Well, you'll be pleased to know that in conclusion, Chair, the principal development has established through the grant of outline consent, access has already been approved with internal access arrangements, also considered now acceptable. The density of development is considered acceptable and the layout is acceptable in respect of the character of the area. The design of the dwellings is also considered acceptable with a mixture of materials and scales of properties, with open space overlooked and residential amenity respected. In regard to these considerations, the recommendation is to grant reserved matters approval subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I would like to propose agenda item 6 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Okay, do we have any speakers on this item? Councillor Smith. Sorry, Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. That happens a lot. I don't think I should be flattered somehow.
Comment, sorry.
Okay, just a few issues with this, I'm afraid. Okay, so this site is in a very rural location. I know it was released for development probably about 10 years ago now, but it's still a very rural location. It's previously farmland, previously greenbelt, and it's adjacent to Limby, which is parts of it are a conservation area, as we know. So my first concern is that we've got 763 dwellings in 33 hectares, which I work out to be about 23 dwellings per hectare, is that right? And I know we've spoken about this thing before, but in rural locations, most of the recommendation is that we aim for about 19 or 20. So my concern is that this particular development is obviously above that number. But again, as we look towards the future, and the threat of large parts of Greenbelt being turned into housing estates, that we certainly try to maintain the 19 or maximum 20 dwellings per hectare in these rural locations. Second point, I noticed from the presentation that there's a lot of 3-storey houses in this development. Again, due to the location, my personal view is I think that's completely inappropriate, and maximum of 2 stories should be looked at. There's also provision for a tram stop, but no provision for car parking at the tram stop, and at least I can't see any unless someone can tell me there is. My worry again is that we'll get residents from places like Sutton in Ashfield, Kirkby in Ashfield, who will want to use that tram to get into Nottingham, and why wouldn't they? That would be a good thing to do. But with no parking provision, I'm worried that that would lead to parking all over this development. And finally, on the flooding, I know you mentioned that briefly to say that the flooding assessment must be done before building commences. I'm sure officers are aware, and maybe not all members are aware, that the current building that's going on there at the moment is still leading to a lot of flooding into what's called the Strata Homes development, which is adjacent to that site. It's also flooding Limby Mill, Limby Docks, and Papplewick Road in Limby. I'm just wondering if we could have something, maybe as a condition, that development can't take place until the flooding that is occurring in Limby is addressed properly, not only the flooding assessment for the site itself. So I don't know if you want to come back to me on any of those points. Oh, and can I also say, Mr. Miles, it's good to see you back at work.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Bestwick. Yeah, a couple of things. So density-wise, The land is allocated for 1,000 houses. We've got 743, I think it is, in this instance. So it is below what it's allocated for.
Fair enough, but it doesn't change the density as it is at the moment compared to what we would expect in a rural location, but I take your point.
Yeah. I don't think there was a question in terms of the 3-storey housing. In terms of the car parking for the net, there could be provision within the local centre to provide the car parking for the net, but of course it is designed for the occupants of top Wighay Farm development, isn't it? It's 1,000 houses, or best part of 3,000-4,000 people. That's the purpose of it. There is potential provision. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could. There is potential space around here at a later date. There's no provision to provide car parking for the net in either the SPD or the policy. So yeah, that's why it's not shown on the plan. There's simply a safeguarding area outlined. Don't want to add anything, Mike? No. In terms of flooding, I think you mentioned flooding in Linby. No, there isn't. It couldn't be included as part of this application to sort out flooding problems in Linby. There is a condition on the outline application, as mentioned before, to provide flooding and drainage details for each phase of development. And if you see the consultation response from the Environment Agency, they're actually stating that they will comment in greater detail on each submission for the detailed flooding and drainage to discharge those conditions. So that would have to go to the Environment Agency and also the lead flood authority to cover that off.
Just one further point that I'd like to add, if I may. It's a reserved matters application only for scale, layout, appearance and landscaping. So it's not an opportunity to consider matters in relation to flooding now. As Mr Miles has said, there are drainage conditions attached to the outline. They will be enforceable. And I think some of the issues that you'd referred to earlier are in connection with the Nottinghamshire County Council office block, which is under construction. And I understand that in relation to some runoff issues there and flooding issues, that's been managed by the contractor acting on behalf of the County Council.
I'm just going to go to Councillor Sam Smith first.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say that I'm not really a big fan of large-scale developments like this, but I'm quite taken aback. I quite like it. It's like a little new village being developed, and I think that should be welcomed. It comes with, not only does it come with housing, it's going to potentially come with a local centre, with shops, public open spaces, games areas, and potentially a local school should demand see it. This is if we're going to go down large-scale developments across the borough but the country, this is exactly what they should be based on, and I think the developers and designers should be commended for that. Particularly about the open green spaces. I mean, multi-use games area, fantastic. Skate parks. Teenagers across the borough are crying out for more skate parks. Absolutely delighted that this application comes with one. Fantastic, they're needed. Sports pitches again, very much needed, and this comes with it. There's not enough good words to say about open spaces that I can say tonight about this, because it's absolutely fantastic. Really pleased to see it. Really commend the developers, the designers, and our planners. Well done, absolutely fantastic, and I'll be voting in favour of it.
Thank you. Councillor Pearson.
I was moved to say that it's very unusually that we agree, but I agree with everything. I think a fantastic job's been done by planning with working with the developers, and I'm very pleased to see that the schools in location and the employment opportunities and the local labour, particularly with a view to training on site. Absolutely fantastic, yes. It's the way forward. So let this be a moment in time where we've agreed with each other. So, so well done, thank you. And very nice to see you back, Craig.
Thank you. Councillor Martin-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It was probably about 12 months ago that Councillor Beswick and I went to a presentation, I think, that Vistry put on in Hucknall Marketplace. One thing that struck me at that meeting, at that consultation, was and it was mentioned by the speaker, was the formation of this Construction Skills Academy, which I think would be very, very welcome in the local area. As ward councillors, we've mentioned this at parish council meetings. Certainly, the residents of Newstead Village, potentially having this on their doorstep, the training academy, were delighted, and I think it would provide great opportunities for local residents. Second comment, I do have a lot of sympathy with the existing residents of Limby and Papawick villages in relation to traffic. Traffic, certainly at peak times in both of those villages, is horrendous. And there is nothing that I've seen in this scheme that mitigates against that. All I can see is the situation will get worse. However, there are lots of other positives from this development, as Councillor Sam Smith has mentioned. One thing that does concern me, though, and it's a little bit more clarification, is regarding the 9v9 football pitches. 9v9 football pitches are primarily used by children in the under 9 and under 10 category. I don't understand why we're being so restrictive on the people, the children, the young people that will be allowed to use these pitches for competitive games. Please go away and try and squeeze in 11v11. 11v11 pitch, as other councils will be aware, can be marked with a 9v pitch in the centre of them. A 9v9 pitch can be marked with a 7v7 pitch for junior children. So I'd urge us not to be so restrictive. Under 9s, under 10s, inevitably will grow. They'll get older. Those children will then be looking for another pitch to play on in the same locality. So let's not be so restrictive. What I'm not sure about is who's going to maintain these pitches, who's going to run the facility. If it's a Gedling Borough Council facility, let's make sure that we maximise the use of these facilities. And one thing I would like to see incorporated into that potential changing room area is secure goal storage. Again, most councils will be aware that most football pitches these days don't have fixed goals socketed into the ground. They wheel them away. They'll bring on an 11v11 goal. They'll bring on a 9v9 goal. Those goals need securing somewhere. So could we have a look at, please, incorporating that into that design? I know it's only a small matter, but let's get it right at the start, please. Thank you.
So just wanted to clarify, in terms of the sports pitch provision, that was considered an earlier committee because there was a change to the Section 106 agreement. So there were some difficulties in terms of accommodating the originally proposed pitches. So that's previously been agreed by this committee. In terms of a change in facility going forward, it's something which could potentially be provided through the parish element of SIL. So there'll be a significant SIL receipt from this, or there could be some other funding that could come forward. But yeah, your comments are noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Pope.
So yes, I support this application, but I wanted to say that could we include the condition around the changing room facilities, and could they include facilities for people who are using the skateboard to use as well, toilet facilities? Thank you.
Unfortunately, it can't. It's not part of these proposals. So it's a specific reserve matters application. So it wouldn't be permissible to put on those prescriptive proposals as part of the any consent.
Can I just, so where Sport England have asked for that, will that come back at a later date?
It's not provided through the outline application, so the outline consent that was granted didn't make that provision. As I said, this is a specific reserve matters application, which is made pursuant to an outline permission that was previously granted by the council. What I'd said earlier is that in terms of those change-in facilities, and it's not disputed that they would add value to the scheme, there can be other opportunities for securing those at a later date through, for example, the parish element of SIL, or there could be other funding opportunities that come forward, and there could be assistance from the Borough Council in terms of providing that support for applying for funding going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Strong.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate this is a really big development, very complicated, and I think the officers ought to be congratulated about the hard work they've obviously put into it. I'm also very pleased to read that a Section 106 legal agreement has been secured, especially in respect of affordable housing, and I hope that any attempt by a developer to water down the requirements is resisted to in full force. I also like to draw attention perhaps to, it might be a bit early, but I'm sure you'll correct me on this, that the plans detailing the bus stops, which sound like absolutely brilliant, bus stops with shelters, has been approved and accepted. But is there any indication that bus services will actually run? This site will be a centre not just for housing but for work and other commercial activities, and it strikes me that the potential for a customer base is quite large. Perhaps it's too early, but it would be more comfortable that the bus companies, as well as saying what bus stops they would like, would indicate what they're willing to do. But it's a good one. I would support it in principle. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other councillors want to speak on this item? No. Right, let's move to the vote. We're voting on agenda item 6. The recommendation is to grant reserved matters approval as stated in paragraph 9 on page 143 of the agenda. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 7, development at Wadham Road, Woodthorpe. Craig Miles will introduce this item.
Oh, geez, right. We're pleased to know this will be a bit quicker than the last presentation. So the application before you relates to a semi-detached property on the side of Wadham Road, Woodthorpe. Now, it's before you not because there's any objection to it, but the applicant's got a relation to the council, and therefore it's been considered by a planning committee. So it's simply a two-storey side extension that we're considering, Chair. It's located within an area with a mix of semi-detached, detached houses of quite unsimilar architectural styles, if I'm frank with you. At the moment, there is a gap in between there, and the proposal really is to set it back, two-storey extension back from the front elevation and set it in very marginally from the side elevation. Should be noted, and there'd be no new bedrooms created, it'd be simply extending into what's there already. And there would, as a result, there'd be no additional car parking required. Now, whilst it's set back and set in slightly, and there's a difference in height levels, I think you'll see it from the site, from these pictures. We don't think there would be any issues relating to terracing, and we think that it would be in keeping with the wider street scene and the character of the area. As I say, it's a very straightforward application. There's been no objections to it. Wouldn't be an impact on parking. And the recommendation, Chair, is to approve planning permission, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I'd like to propose agenda item 7 for the purpose of debate. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Any councillors want to speak on this item? Okay, shall we move straight to the vote then? The recommendation is to grant permission. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That was unanimous. So now we will move on to agenda item 8, which is an appeal decision for noting. Any comments on this item? Are we happy to note it? Yeah. Agenda item 9 is also an appeal decision for noting. Any comments? So we're happy to note it? Yep. Move on to agenda item 10, which is also an appeal decision. Are we happy? Any comments on this item? Are we happy to note it? Thank you. Agenda item 11 is the future applications, which is for noting. Any comments? Councillor Walker.
Twice tonight I'm going to talk. I just noticed on that a future application is the Baptist Church on Cross Street, which is wanting residential apartments, and I do know that is quite near to the proposed ones at the nursing home. So that's interesting when that comes along about what parking provision they have there as well. So I'll look forward to getting that application and having a look. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Are we happy to note this item? Yep. Agenda items 12 is the planning delegation panel action sheets. Any comments on this item? Are we happy to note it? Okay, and finally, no urgent business, unless anybody has any. No. Thank you very much for attending.